The following content presents a fictional conversation imagined for reflection on moral and spiritual consequences. It contains references to sensitive historical events involving extreme violence and organized crime. This material does not glorify or endorse the actions described, but seeks to promote deep reflection on justice, repentance, and redemption. Discretion is advised. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, a name that still echoes terror in Colombian hearts 3 decades after his death. Born into poverty in 1949, he became the world's most wanted man in the 80s and 90s. He controlled 80% of the world's cocaine trade. He accumulated an estimated fortune of $30 billion. But the price? More than 46,000 violent deaths linked to his empire of terror. He murdered 600 police officers. He brought down a commercial airplane, killing 107 innocents. He executed 3 presidential candidates. He turned poor boys into killers. He spread fear throughout an entire nation. On December 2, 1993, at 44 years old, Pablo Escobar was gunned down on a rooftop in Medellín. But what if, in a space beyond time, where masks fall and truths are confronted without earthly power, he met the one before whom every soul will give account? Imagine this encounter, not as glorification, but as a mirror of our own choices, as a confrontation between eternal justice and human arrogance.
Jesus? So it's you. Well, I imagined this moment would come. But let me speak first, because there are many lies about Pablo Escobar that need to be clarified. You know poverty, don't you? You were born simple too. So you should understand. I came from nothing. My mother was a teacher, my father a poor farmer. I saw children dying of hunger while the rich in Bogotá swam in luxury. I saw how the government abandoned my people. Medellín was forgotten, despised. I changed that. I built entire neighborhoods for the poor. 1,200 houses. Soccer fields. Street lighting. What the government never did, Pablo Escobar did. I was called Robin Hood by those in need. They loved me because I saw them, I helped them. Yes, I entered the cocaine business. But I didn't invent the demand. Americans wanted it, I supplied it. It was just business, commerce. Like any businessman, I had to defend myself from competitors and enemies. The government wanted to extradite me like a dog to the United States. I couldn't allow that. The deaths? They were inevitable consequences of a war that I did not start. They declared me an enemy first. They wanted to break my family, destroy everything I built. I had to respond. I had to show strength, otherwise I would be massacred like a lamb. I wasn't a monster. I was a businessman who protected what was mine and took care of my people. The rich have always killed the poor in silence, through hunger and abandonment. At least I was honest about my war. At least I gave the poor what they deserved. If this is sin, then all the powerful on earth are sinners. The difference is that I openly assumed my struggle.
Pablo, I know your childhood. I know every tear of hunger, every humiliation of poverty that marked your heart. The pain you felt was real. The injustice you witnessed existed. Your initial love for family and those in need had genuine seeds. But listen carefully. Pain does not justify spreading pain. Injustice does not authorize creating more injustice. I too was born poor. I too saw suffering. I too felt the oppression of the powerful. But I chose to heal, not to wound. I chose to lift up, not to destroy. You say you were Robin Hood, but Robin Hood didn't murder innocents. You say you defended your people, but you turned children into killers. You took pure boys and filled them with blood. Where's the love in that? Allow me to tell you a parable. 2 men saw an injured person on the road. The first said, "The injustice that caused this must be avenged," and went out killing everyone who might be guilty, spreading more wounded along the way. The second healed the injured, paid for his recovery, and changed the structures that caused such tragedies. Which of the 2 did my will? You had resources to heal much suffering, Pablo. $30 billion could have built 1,000 hospitals, fed millions, educated an entire generation. But you chose the path of violence. You turned your pain into a weapon against innocence. I invite you now to what I always invite every soul. Recognize the truth about your choices. Not the pain that wounded you, that I understand perfectly, but the pain you chose to cause. Every life you ordered taken had a mother, children, dreams. They were as valuable as you were to your mother. The question is not whether you suffer injustice. The question is, what did you do with your suffering? Did you use it to justify becoming what you hated most?
No! I don't accept this version of the facts. You don't understand how that world worked. It wasn't possible to be a saint among wolves. The Colombian government was a mafia in suits and ties. They stole billions, killed union leaders, massacred peasants. Where was divine justice when they did that? At least I was honest about my violence. Those police officers who died, they weren't innocent. They were soldiers in a war. I offered plata o plomo, silver or lead. I gave them a choice. Whoever chose to confront me knew the consequences. It was a declared war, not cowardly murders. And the Avianca plane? It was an operational error. The target was Cesar Gaviria, who wanted to hand me over to the Americans as a trophy. He wasn't even on the flight. My tears were genuine when I learned about the other victims. But in war, there are casualties. How many innocents died in American bombs in Iraq? Where was your condemnation there? As for the children, Jesus, you don't understand. Those boys were already lost. They lived on the streets, sniffing glue, stealing to eat. I gave them purpose, money, family. Yes, some died, but they were dying of hunger before they met me. At least I gave them dignity. You speak easily of forgiveness and love because you never had to govern in hell. You never had to choose between your family and your enemies. I had responsibilities. 1,000 people depended on me. Entire communities survived because of me. If I were really the monster they paint, I wouldn't have surrendered to the government in 1991. I agreed to go to prison to give peace to Colombia. But they broke the agreement, wanted to humiliate me, extradite me. That's when I returned to war. I wasn't perfect, but I was necessary at that moment. Colombia needed someone who wasn't afraid of the powerful in Bogota.
Pablo, now I must speak the truths that your soul knows, but your mouth denies. Listen and do not interrupt, for every word I shall pronounce is written in the eternal book of justice. Between 1983 and 1993, more than 600 police officers were murdered by your direct orders. They weren't soldiers in a just war. They were men trying to protect innocent families from the terror you spread. In November 1989, you ordered the bomb on Avianca Flight 203. 107 innocent souls, including 2 small children, were torn apart in the air. You call this an operational error, but I call it by its true name, mass murder. Luis Carlos Galán, Jamie Pardo Leal, Bernardo Jaramillo, 3 presidential candidates executed by your orders because they defended justice and law. How many other leaders, judges, journalists were silenced to maintain your reign of terror? You created a school for child assassins. You took boys of 10, 12 years old and taught them to kill police officers for money. You didn't give them dignity. You stole their childhood and innocence. Today, decades later, Medellín still reaps the bitter fruit of these seeds of violence. Your prison at La Catedral? An obscene farce. You built a luxury palace where you continued commanding executions, including of your own men who dared contradict you. Even in supposed surrender, you mocked justice. And when I ask you about the 46,000 violent deaths linked to your cartel during a decade of terror, what do you answer? That it was necessary? That it was business? Pablo, don't compare your crimes to the failures of other governments. 2 injustices don't make 1 justice. You weren't Robin Hood. You were a tyrant who used the poor as shield for your greed and thirst for power. The truth that hurts most is this. You had the capacity to be a transformative leader, but you chose to be a destroyer. The question I ask you now is the same I ask every soul. Do you recognize the evil you chose to do?
Stop with those numbers. You think I don't know? You think I can sleep without seeing the faces? 46,000. I know. Each of those numbers has a name, has a family crying. But you don't understand the pressure. When you control an empire of that size, when thousands of people depend on your decisions, when enemies emerge from all sides, there are no pure choices. There are no clean paths. Calan was different. He really wanted to change Colombia. But he was going to destroy me in the process. He was going to hand all of us over to the Americans. I had family too. My Manuela, my Juan Pablo, they didn't deserve to pay for my sins. And those children on the plane. Jesus Christ, you think it doesn't torment me? 2 little children. I never wanted that. It was Roberto who set the bomb wrong. I only wanted Gaviria. But when I found out, when I saw the photos in the newspapers, maybe you're right about the boys. Those child killers. I told myself I was saving them from hunger, giving them opportunity. But the truth is they were disposable to me. It was easier to use children because Colombian justice was lighter on minors. They died and I recruited others. That's what tortures me most now. Not the wars with the government, not the enemies I killed. But those innocent eyes I corrupted. Those pure souls I turned into demons. I became what I most hated in Bogota's elite, someone who saw common people as disposable pieces on a board. The difference is I came from poverty, so I thought I had the right. But I didn't, did I? No one has the right to play God with human lives.
Now I hear your soul speaking, Pablo. When you stop justifying and begin to recognize, truth can begin to work in you. Listen to me carefully. I came into the world not to condemn, but to save. Even for you, there is hope, but only through the narrow gate of genuine repentance. Not the repentance that still seeks justifications, but that which accepts the complete truth about your choices. In the doctrine I teach through my modern servants, there are eternal principles of justice and mercy. Justice demands that every offense be paid for. You created massive spiritual debts, 46,000 lives, destroyed families, traumatized society, corrupted children. These debts do not simply disappear because you die. But mercy offers a path. Through my atoning sacrifice, I can pay the price, but only if there was complete repentance, total confession, and commitment to do everything in your power to repair what was broken. In the afterlife, according to eternal laws, your soul will pass through different degrees of glory based on your choice to accept or reject light. Those who chose extreme darkness, as you chose, will face proportional consequences. Not infinite torment, as some doctrines teach, but perfect justice that may last eons until every offense is balanced. But there is still choice, Pablo. Even now, you can accept the complete truth, that you are not a victim forced to kill, but a man who chose power above love. That your initial pain was real, but the pain you caused others were conscious choices. If you recognize this completely, without reservations or justifications, and cry for mercy not for your past suffering, but for the suffering you caused others, there is still hope for redemption. The crucial question is, are you willing to feel all the pain you caused to each of the 46,000 victims? Are you prepared to experience the grief of every mother who lost her child because of you? This is the only bridge between justice and mercy. Not escaping the consequences, but crossing through them with true repentance. What do you choose, Pablo? Continue justifying yourself or accept total responsibility and seek genuine redemption?
In this imaginary dialogue, we see how absolute power can corrupt even those who begin with intentions to help those in need. Pablo Escobar really did build houses and help the poor in Medellín. But when he chose the path of violence to conquer and maintain power, he became the very evil he claimed to fight. History teaches us something crucial. Charismatic leaders who promise justice through violence, who claim to represent the forgotten while spreading terror, who justify atrocities in the name of noble causes, these are the most dangerous. Because they seduce not only through power, but through the apparent virtue of their initial motivations. How many societies have already fallen into the temptation of supporting men who promised greatness through questionable methods? How many have already paid the devastating price of handing power to those who believe the ends justify any means? The question that remains for each of us is this: when we see leaders who speak beautifully but act with cruelty, who promise justice but practice revenge, who claim to love the people but treat lives as numbers, will we have the wisdom to recognize the signs before it's too late? Or will we make the fatal mistake of supporting new Escobars, thinking that this time will be different? The scars in Colombia still bleed 3 decades later. Let this memory serve as a vaccine against future seductions. When we see the rise of those who promise to solve complex problems through simple violence, who claim noble causes while leaving trails of innocent blood, who build their power on the graves of the defenseless, may we remember the 46,000 souls who paid the price for one man's corrupted ambition. The choice, as always, remains ours. This was a fictional representation created for educational and reflective purposes about moral consequences of extreme choices. The content does not endorse or glorify Pablo Escobar's actions or any form of violence. Verifiable historical sources, educational documentaries, and links to organizations supporting victims of violence are available in this video's description. For more information about the crimes of drug trafficking and their impacts on Colombian society, please consult the references provided.